5 weeks, 4 days, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
29 days.
yeah, I will burnt 27 of my 29 days.
Use them.
Yeah. Yes. Hi, Ian. Rich Peabody. All right, it's 2 minutes. This is very different. You hear what that's doing? 1, 2, 3. If I lean on it, it's okay. I guess I can work with it that way. Yeah, so I can speak to it from about here. Three, four, five, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's just this odd. Oh, I see. We're not up there. We're out here. That's better. That's really nice. Thank you. That's candy to my ears, or to my hearing aids. Hey, we're just a minute or so away from getting this thing started. That big long line coming in here, you know, we're just concerned about getting everybody into these extra chairs we're going to set up in a moment. But it's good to have you here. We'll just get going in another 1 minute. Or,
Yeah. Just yanking your chain. You might want to remind people, silence.
yeah, I needed the minute to turn the volume down on my phone. So hi, everybody. It's good to have you here on a Wednesday night. It was a Prince spaghetti night at my house. My wife looked at this frozen block of hamburger and said, what am I going to do with that? I said, spaghetti, of course. So here I am, freshly spaghettied, and all packed to jump on an airplane later. So we'll see how that all works out with the way things are going today in the airlines. It's a special town meeting, Wednesday, June 28th, 2023, 7 o'clock at 28 Northfield Road, Erving, Mass., which I've learned is the Erving Elementary School when I tried to figure out where I was going tonight. And our warrant says Commonwealth of Massachusetts Franklin SS, Town of Erving Constables, Town Clerk, and Administrative Assistant. In the name of the Commonwealth, you are directed to notify and warn the said inhabitants qualified to vote in town affairs to meet on the grounds of the Erving Elementary School located at 28 Northfield Road, Erving, Massachusetts, zip code 01344, on Wednesday, June 28, 2023 at 7 p.m. Qualified inhabitants will meet then and there to vote on the following articles in the warrant, and are listed in your warrant as Articles 1 through 4. In addition, you are hereby directed to serve the above warrant and to post attested copies as directed by vote of the town at least 14 days before said meeting. Fail not and make due return of this warrant with your doings thereon to the town clerk for the day of said meeting, given under our hands this 12th day of June 2023 and signed by all of our Board of Select Board. And the posting required certifies Franklin SS, Town of Erving. I have served up the above warrant by posting attested copies as directed by vote of the town at least 14 days before the time of holding said meeting, and it is signed by one of our constables. With that said, Town clerk has notified me that we do have a quorum, So we can officially call this meeting to order, and if you wouldn't mind, we'll all rise and pledge allegiance to our country and our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. It truly is good to see you. A lot of the familiar faces that attend these kinds of meetings, so thank you. And some new folks as well, so thank you. Our first article, Article Number 1, Revolving Fund, Transfer to Continuing Appropriation for Park Maintenance. It's transferring $18,000 from the Recreation Revolving Account. It's submitted by the Recreation Commission, and the Finance Committee recommends approval. Take a motion as printed with a second on it. Thank you very much. Are there questions on what Article 1 does? Comments? With no questions appearing, all those in favor of Article 1, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Article 1 has passed unanimously. Article 2, Appropriation for Water Capital Improvements, is $51,000. And it's submitted by the Select Board and Water Commissioners. Capital Planning Committee recommends approval, as well as the Finance Committee. Motion and second. Thank you very much. Puts this article in front of us for any questions, concerns, or conversation. With no questions appearing, all those in favor of Article 2, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Article 2 passes with a majority. Article 3 is to rescind the borrowing authorization for lead service line inventory and replacement plan project. It's in the amount of $125,000. It's submitted by the Select Board. The Finance Committee recommends approval, as well as the Capital Planning Committee. We have a motion and a second, bringing Article 3 up for our eyeballs to gaze upon and our minds to think about. Is there any question and or comment on what Article 3 is doing for us? Questions invited? None given? All those in favor of Article 3, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Article 3 passes unanimously. Article 4 is a vote to authorize acquisition of rights in land parcels. And these land parcels are briefly described in this article. It's submitted by the Select Board. The Finance Committee recommends approval, as well as the Capital Planning Committee. Article 4 as printed, yes? And a second. Thank you. I see a hand in the air. There's a motion to pass over the article. Care to comment on your motion?
We don't have the final plan to reference, so until we do, we may have to redo it anyway.
Okay, anyone care to second your motion? Okay, motion to pass over with a second. We don't have the plans yet by which to do the work. Make it legal. Motion and a second. Are there questions on passing over this article? No questions appearing. All those in favor of passing over Article 4, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Article 4 is passed over unanimously. Article 5, which I'm going to say that in the beginning I said we had 4 articles. We have 5. Article 5 is the amend and recodify the zoning bylaw. And there are deletions and creations related to various parts of the bylaws. submitted by the planning board. Motion and a second puts us in front of us for conversation, consideration, clarification, whichever things may be needed. Yes, sir. Yep, that's the new spot. We worked that out at the town meeting that we need to go this way to make it happen.
Okay, thank you. I came over here because that's the Finance Committee, and my questions, it's not my personal opinion committee. I come over here because it's not financial in nature, it's a personal question in nature, and I want people to think I'm doing it as a Finance Committee person, because I'm not.
I appreciate your clarification on that, Dan.
I'd like to ask for clarification on one of the sections about agriculture. As I'm reading it, and I think we have conflicting understandings of it, but as I'm reading it, if you have less than 2 acres, it says qualified, but it's less than 2 acres, it limits having a horse, a cow, or chickens, poultry, it says. I was appointed to the zoning board as an alternate in 1973, I think it was. I've been on it with the exception of a couple of months ever since. And we only had one complaint that came before the zoning board, and this is a zoning bylaw, about chickens. And it was from a guy he was an elderly fella, and he didn't like the little kid next door since he rode his tricycle into his yard. And when the kid grew up and had chickens, he brought it to the zoning board, can't have chickens. So that was on Pratt Street. So it worked out. And we only had one complaint about a cow. A fella at the end of West High Street would buy 2 calves, raise them up, sell one, and keep the meat from the other one. And all the neighbors liked it except one. They'd all go up and down the street with a wheelbarrow and use the cow manure for their gardens, and this one guy didn't like the smell. Those are the only 2 complaints on where we had them in 50 years. Now, apparently there's a place in Erving Center where there is some, I don't know, chickens, ducks, geese, pigs, I don't know what they are. But I'd like some clarification on this because a cow and a horse are way different than a chicken. It costs you $26 for half a dozen chickens at Tractor Supply, and a horse and a cow is kind of a different issue. What I'd like to see is this whole section removed and brought back at another date, and for another reason also. It doesn't specifically list pigs and swine. Now, I'm told there's an opinion that since it says livestock, that's kind of included. Well, when you specifically say horses, cows, poultry, but you don't say something else, somebody can easily come to the zoning board and say, well, it's not there. They could have put it in if they wanted to, but they didn't. I think it should have pigs in there. Because we've all ridden around and smelled cow manure fertilizing the garden somewhere and said, yeah, well, you know, it's okay. Pigs, pardon me, stink. They're horrible, wherever they are next door. The other thing, pigs, the other thing is a peacock. If you've ever heard a peacock, it's not listed here, they sound like something out of Jurassic Park. Those things should both be on there. So I'd just like clarification. If somebody wants to have a half a dozen chickens, can they? Or must they go through a special permit process? Because here it says you need to go to the select board for a special permit, which means you have $100, $150 for pay for the certified mailings to your neighbors and their neighbors, advertise in the paper, have hearings, and the person wants to have a half a dozen chickens. So, thank you. If there's clarification, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you for your question. And here's somebody who knows how to clarify or discuss that. How you doing, Jackie?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think so. Just if you could tilt it more towards you, that'd be great. There you go.
Better? Closer. Well, I have a loud voice to begin with, so. So this particular zoning bylaw was one that was recommended to us by our consulting attorney who worked on us with the zoning bylaws. So you'll notice in the front that all agricultural, horticulture, and floriculture on a parcel 5 acres or more or 2 qualified acres is allowed by right. So 2 qualified acres or less than 2 qualified acres is if you produce more than $1,000 in sales. So if you're in the business of raising livestock to make money or, you know, vegetables or whatever, and you're on less than 2 acres, then you can do it by right. So the part that Dan's concerned about, which are properties under 5 acres or less than 2 qualified acres in size, is to address the issue of our small lot sizes in Erving Center or Erving Side, where said neighbor doesn't want to raise a dozen chickens, but wants to raise 50 chickens. If we don't address it, then they can do it by right. We had a long discussion about this with the attorney. We didn't really want to be in the livestock business. We felt it was more of a Board of Health regulation. We gave the Board of Health some regulations, which I believe they are working on. But until then, we decided that the Select Board would be the people if the issue came up. So could you have half a dozen chickens in your house? Sure, okay. But this is to address the issue of somebody who goes over and has multiple livestock on less than 5 acres or 2 qualified acres. Because the abutter or the neighborhood they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Because if you are taking care of your livestock and you don't have anything in place for that, you can do it. You know, the animal inspector said if you offer shelter and you have food for your animals and and clean water, right now you can have as many animals on a 1/4 of an acre of land with your house and your shed as you want. And we couldn't do anything about that. So that's what this is to address. Now, you're concerned that we're just singling out poultry, horses, or cows. It's not that. It says livestock, and we got into this, did we need to be more specific? And we were told that we did not. This was just a general, livestock is a definition of livestock, and this was just giving some examples. So it wasn't saying yes or no, it was just giving some examples.
Thank you for your explanations. I stand here wondering how what was sent to all of us at our houses even gets us to chickens, livestock, and horses. But I guess that would be if I had gone to the public hearing about the zoning bylaw stuff, I'd know that.
And I just want to say, so this has been up on the website for many months. We held one informational hearing, and we held 2 public hearings. It's a big document. It didn't go to everyone's house because it would have been astronomical to print and mail out, and this year was a budget crunch year. So we did it through the website and through the public hearings, which were well promoted, and we did send home a flyer in the around town about the public hearings. So,
Okay, thank you. That helps me understand how we end up talking about chickens and livestock when I had no idea. Thank you.
May I? Thank you, Jackie, for the explanation. And Jackie and I and all of us, I think, we get along quite well, even though we disagree sometimes. We don't try to destroy each other, which is how I think it should be. But in this case, I don't think the explanation is adequate, at least in my eyes. Where is the attorney from that where were they from? Do you know?
he lives in Concord, but it's Mark, I'm going to mispronounce. Yeah, see, I'm nervous, and so I'm going to mispronounce it. So Mariah, help me out. Thank you. Who is a well-known zoning attorney. He's written lots of books on zoning decisions, and we were able to use him through a grant that Mariah was able to get for us. So he's well-versed in the zoning bylaws.
Do I add something?
Sure. I'd like to add some more information.
I'm Mariah. I'm the town planner, for those of you I haven't met. So Mark also did the zoning bylaws for a lot of towns in Franklin County. So he does have experience with rural towns, if that's what you're getting to, Dan. He doesn't just write them for Eastern Mass. So he's done Bernardston's, he's, I think, done Deerfields. Over the past, I think, like 30 years, he's done a handful. So if that's any comfort, he doesn't just work in big cities.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you. That clears it up for me and everybody else. He's not from a rural area, but he's worked in them, and that's fine. And I don't have anything bad to say about him, and I applaud the planning board for putting in all their time and hearings and all they're doing. I don't disagree with most of what they're doing. But in this case, I would move that we remove poultry, the word poultry, from this bylaw, and I hope people will agree. Jackie mentioned, well, it's only for those who want to have more, but that's not what this says. If you want it to say only up to 20 chickens or whatever, please do so. But it's my understanding, we can't make things more restrictive. We can make them a little less restrictive by amendment here. So I'm hoping that the planning board will come back again, another time, with more amendments or more revisions that they propose that include specifically pigs and peacocks, because they stink and they're noisy. But anyways, I would move, if anybody would second for discussion, that we remove poultry from here, because I think it's very vastly different than cows and horses.
A motion, does anyone care to second? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we have a motion and a second to remove the word poultry from the bylaw.
To remove poultry, okay.
So now we talk about the motion, because that would be the procedure here. Hi, Jackie, what does removing the word poultry from the bylaw do to you? Or what you think it does to the bylaw?
Well, it just means that if your neighbor in your small neighborhood decides to have 20 or 40 chickens, there's no recourse. I mean, I'll be honest, we struggled with this part of the bylaw. We had at least 2 meetings over discussing it. We weren't entirely comfortable with it. But because we don't have Board of Health regulations, which is usually what happens, so the Board of Health says, okay, you're a right to farm community, or we're going to allow you to have up to 20 chickens, all right? Anything after that, you have to adhere to the bylaw. But we don't have those kind of regulations in place. So this was what the attorney had recommended for recourse if somebody, has too many animals for their location. And your peacock thing, that probably is included in livestock because it's still considered an animal. It really does lie in the Board of Health regulations, but until then, there's no recourse otherwise.
Mariah?
I would just say that I don't think that removing the word poultry from that line, Dan, is going to necessarily do what you think it will, because it does say livestock, including poultry. So I think, not a lawyer, but I think if you wanted to do what I think you intend doing, which is remove poultry from that, you'd be better off saying, to remove that section C and just have the planning board return to it. Deb?
I just Googled
Sorry.
the legal definition of livestock.
Okay.
Livestock includes cattle, sheep, horses, goats, other domestic animals ordinarily raised for use on a farm. Turkeys or domesticated fowl are considered poultry and are not livestock within the meaning of this exemption.
Okay, I take it back.
However, that is a specific exemption to that code. It is not Massachusetts definition of livestock. Massachusetts definition of livestock for their importing and exporting regulations, cattle, swine, sheep, goats, horses, and llamas, and other domesticated animals. So they're all inclusive, because there's a whole section about poultry, swine, all of that's in the livestock definition at Mass.gov, so I would think as a Massachusetts town that would apply. We don't have a definition in here, so, that I know of.
Is all of that they're saying finding its way into your audio? Because we didn't put them on microphones?
Can you hear me? Yeah, Mike Schaefer. You could say exclude poultry and livestock, excluding poultry.
Well,
I'm almost done, and you've listened to me
Yeah.
more than I should be up here talking, and you
So,
all would talk too much anyway.
does his changing that to just removing the word poultry to include the words exclude poultry? Does that change what your motion is? We're talking about the motion here, so.
Sure, I would withdraw my motion if the second would withdraw, and I would remake a motion.
Okay, the second's withdrawn, the first is withdrawn, go ahead.
I move that be worded here to exclude poultry. And if this becomes, the thing is, it doesn't say you can only have up to 5 or 10 or 15, or it doesn't say you can't have 40, it just says poultry. So somebody comes and complains because the guy beside him's got 1 chicken, how are you going to say? It just doesn't say that. I appreciate what your intent is great, And I'd certainly support re-looking at this. I'm not saying make it go away forever, but if there's a second to that, that's what I'd like to do, to exclude poultry.
To exclude poultry is the word you want to show up in the article. Does anybody second that? You still do? Okay, very good. See, I don't see this wording right here, so what are we
We
doing?
need to strike poultry from including, and I think we'd have to add at the end excluding poultry.
Dan, does this, and your second, does this make sense to you? Are you seeing Section C, agricultural and open spaces, and then are you seeing number 4? Go ahead and explain that.
So you can see it on the board. If anyone can't see, I can make it bigger. But so under C4, I think you would change it, the last bit, to be including strike poultry, horses or cows, excluding poultry. Dan, is that getting at what you're saying? Okay.
Is that consistent with the seconder? Okay, very good. You're both in agreement. That's the new motion. Have you got a spot to record that?
I'll take it off of here because that's the same thing that she's got, which, yeah, it's 4, yeah, okay. Thank you.
So if we have this properly noted, then we'll ask for additional discussion of the new motion.
The qualified acres and size of the raising or keeping of livestock, including horses or cows. So you're going to delete poultry,
poultry,
and you're going to add
comma space, excluding poultry.
excluding, yeah.
We have to do that to be sure we captured what we're talking about. Additional conversation or response on this amendment. So we're going to strike that word poultry that appears earlier, and at the end of that group 4 sentence, we're going to comma space after cows, comma space excluding poultry. That's the motion that we have in front of us. Additional conversation on the motion. Yes, sir.
I would be supportive if the planning board comes back at another time, adds pigs, swine, peacocks, and some limit of amount of poultry. They don't want you to have 100 chickens or whatever it is. I'd probably support something like that.
So we have an amendment and the offer to, we could withdraw
I
the
just-
amendment and pass over and bring it back again.
I just want to be clear, this isn't really something the planning board is supposed to be doing. If the Board of Health had regulations regarding this type of activity, we wouldn't be here being so specific. So I would urge that the Board of Health look at the regulations that were sent to them and come up with something that would offer guidelines for those that want to raise their own chickens or pigs or whatever.
I did the most neighborly thing in the world when I bought my piece of land and hadn't built my house yet. I told everybody I was going to put a pig farm on it.
I'm going to wear out the floor between here and the chair. I would agree with what Jackie said. We do agree most of the time.
Okay, so we still have a motion in front of us that has been previously described. Is there any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor of amending Article 5 as it has been previously stated, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
Sounds like we're nearly split on that one, so I'd like to count it. All those in favor of amending Article 5 as it has been previously stated, please stand and be counted and remain standing till I tell you to sit down, just so we don't get lost on counting people.
I'm sitting.
All right, all those opposed to amending Article 5 as it has been previously stated, please stand and be counted. All right, it was 12 for the amendment and 15 against the amendment, so the amendment has been struck down. This brings us back to Article 5 in its original condition and original language. Is there any questions or comments on Article 5? Yes. Hi, how are you? Nice, glad to hear it.
And I don't mean to come into this at the 11th hour, but I just have a kind of a procedural question. So in the event that this bylaw passes tonight, but then the, not the Board of Select, the Board of Health, thank you, comes up with different ideas, bylaws, procedures, whatever, however they phrase it, what happens to this? Do we then come back and modify our bylaw, or does that supersede our bylaw? I'm just trying to understand. So if they come back and, like Jackie was saying, say they put a limit on it for 5 chickens or a quarter of an acre or some sort of other thing that's different than our bylaws, how does that work?
I think the answer is sneaking up behind you.
So the Board of Health regulations would come into first, so the bylaw would still stand, but it would be if the property owner wanted to do appeal type thing, they could go before the select board, or if we find out differently, then we'll just negate the bylaw. We'll come back and strike it. So it stays on the books until you strike it, but if we really, what we want are regulations from the Board of Health. Once that happens, then we can come back and we can strike the bylaw.
Everybody follow that? Yeah, okay. It's government. We're going to have a motion to amend the motion to rescind the, yeah. That'd be our federal government. All right, Article 5, are there further questions? No questions appearing. All those in favor of Article 5, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. Article 5 has passed with a substantive majority, only one dissenting vote. I had to say that because it does require a 2/3 majority. All right, Article 76. Oh, there is no Article 76. It's not annual town meeting. Is there any business that people have other questions on that this forum would be right to speak to at the moment? Okay, then I would accept a motion to adjourn. From anybody. Motion and a second. All those in favor of adjourning the town meeting, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed say no. Yeah, thank you. The town meeting is adjourned. Appreciate you all being here on a Wednesday Prince Spaghetti night. And for the record, it's Barilla spaghetti.